Javier, it's such a pleasure to have you on the Collective Institute of Ideas podcast. You teach an amazing class on public speaking at IU Business School. What really struck me is just how multidimensional communication is. You're clearly fascinated by the world of communication. Why is that?
First, I've always done this. I've been managing companies in Spain, and I've worked in marketing departments of large FMCG companies. And I came to realize that the number one thing is how you communicate. Well, my first stint was at Procter & Gamble. In Procter & Gamble, they make a novelist out of you because everything needs to be in written form. Everything is one page memos, of course. And you get used to, hey, this is not only necessary, it's normal, and it should be there, and we should know how to communicate very well. And then I did my PhD in communication, and there I found out that the number one ability in charismatic leaders is public speaking. Communicating in general, but above all, being able to stand up in front of an audience and persuade them. If you don't know how to communicate, you're not going anywhere. You may be a fantastic motivator, a great negotiator, you may have the best vision for a team. Okay, thank you very much. You don't know how to communicate that, you're going nowhere. And then communication is so easy to do, but then that's the problem with communication, which is everyone can do it because everyone can open their mouth and start to say something. But you can be so much better. So my purpose, what drives me is to make great communicators out of normal communicators, which is, I think, what we do at a business school every day. That is what I do in my courses.
Is there something surprising about your journey that people often don't know about?
I enjoy doing it. I enjoy training it. But that's the bit which I think makes me a little bit different, which is I'm a scuba diving instructor. So I took up instructing in scuba diving, so I did all the courses. I actually went to Australia to do my instructor course many years ago. And then what I found out when I set up my own diving school with a friend, what I found out is what I really enjoy is not the diving itself, is teaching people how to do it. Because you get someone who's not very good at this. He's a good swimmer, that's it. And then her boyfriend says, hey, you should take up diving because I like it, and now we're getting married, so we should do things together. And then someone who's swimming okay, after 2 weeks of training, she's diving like a fish. So the feeling of, I just did this for this person with this person, and she's a different human being now. So you take someone and then you transform that someone. It's such a rewarding sensation. So I like public speaking. I like training public speaking. And above all, I like the change I see in you when you finish your training, which is what happened with you, Arthur, and your mates, because you were also very good after we practiced so much.
There's so much that forms communication. What do you think are the main areas in which people get communication wrong?
The most important thing is that they open their mouths and they think, okay, I just expressed this, so I'm fine. I sit down, they clap, great. It's probably been a disaster because you don't have the template with which to organize your speech. So I think people get it wrong in that it's just run-of-the-mill communication, which should be so much better. Not only it could be better, it should be better. Because, as I said, it's the number one ability in great leaders. Any leader you can think of, any person you admire in leading teams, she's a great speaker, always. From famous, horrendous dictators to persons like Gandhi. Gandhi was low-key in his communication, but he was full of passion. I get goosebumps when I think of his speeches. So the number one thing people get wrong is that they just cruise through their speech and it will be fine. It's not fine. It can always be so much better, and it's so easy to change through training. The most important thing in public speaking is you need to do it over and over again. So you should find opportunities to speak, and we don't speak in general. Most people won't face an audience of 30 individuals 5 times a week, which is what we do as professors. So if you want to improve your public speaking, become a professor, because you're speaking every day, all day.
And people have all sorts of characteristic traits. Some are more confident than others. What are the levers you can think of, some basic levers that people can use to improve their communication, be it non-verbal or verbal?
The number one thing is recognizing what you do well. And this is why I don't let students evaluate themselves, evaluate other students. So, it's peer evaluation. That's going to be horrible because that person is not an expert. And then the first thing she'll say to you is, you are not very natural. You come across as you're faking it. And also your hands are not moving very well. And then you destroy that individual because he thinks, okay, I'm not good enough for this. So it's essential to find out what you do well, mainly in your nonverbal expression. And then what you can fine tune in the components of your expression. So you come across as what they need you to come across. Audiences need two things from you. They want you to be an authority, so to show power, and they want you to show enthusiasm. So you're passionate about your topic. So number one is finding out, what do I do well? Because that will allow you to reform, to amend what you're not doing that very well. And it's mainly your expressivity. So the way you come across. Now, you cannot change yourself. This is essential. So this is why I always say to people, don't watch videos on YouTube. Don't do that. Because you're trying to be like Obama, you're trying to be like Jacinta Ardern in New Zealand. What's the problem? You're not the guy, you're not that lady, so you'll never be able to speak like that guy. Not because you're worse or better, but because you're not the guy. So don't watch videos on YouTube, it's bad for you. Just get a coach, get an expert who can tell you what you're doing well, what you can change. That's on what relates to your nonverbal expression. And then the easiest thing to change is nonverbal, although it may seem the opposite. What do you mean? I want to speak like Obama. I can't be as expressive. Yes, you can. But the most complicated thing is crafting a speech which is memorable, persuasive, and interesting. And there's a few things you can change in that speech to make it.
The most brilliant conversationalists that you've come across, what are some of the things that they do that you think, wow, that is genius, I want to adopt that?
This is an interesting aspect of learning how to express yourself in front of an audience, because what you learn to do applies to one-on-one conversations. So for instance, if you remember, I always say, don't let your hands touch unless it is to express something, because they're transmitting defensiveness. You're protecting your vital organs. This would be the extremes of folding your arms. So when you learn what you transmit with what you do with your nonverbal components of your nonverbal expression, then you can apply that in conversations with other people, not only on a stage, but in normal conversations, day-to-day conversations. And then because you know what you're transmitting, which is power and maybe passion about what you're talking, then you feel safer. So it's a virtuous loop, because I may feel more or less safe or assured with that particular individual I'm talking to. But because I know what I'm transmitting, I know what that person is perceiving about me, then I'm going to feel safer.
And there's something about listening. Sometimes it can be difficult. People find it difficult to listen when they hear others talk. Do you think that's a big component of communication?
Yes, of course. The best conversationalist is the one who tells you about yourself. So listening is a key component in communication, of course. It's not that big of a component in public speaking, because you're the one speaking, not the ones listening, except when it comes to the Q&A. One interesting thing, if you're facing a question from an audience, is shut up before you answer. Shut up, think, and then say something. So if it's a nice question, you shut up for a couple of seconds. What you're saying to that person is, look, I care about you so much that I'm taking the time to come up with the best answer for you. This is special for you. And then if it's a nasty question, 4 to 5 seconds, what you're saying is, first, I'm in charge, and then you're looking for the best answer, which is always better than the first that comes to mind. So most people are not great listeners. The reason for that is we're dying to express our views. Then we disregard a large part of what's being said as irrelevant, and then we're thinking about what to say. So we're not great listeners. The other thing we do, which makes us not such fantastic listeners, is we want to add parallels. So you say to me, Javier, let me tell you about my trip to India, man. It was fantastic. I loved it. And then I stop you and I say, oh, did you like the North? I've been there a few times and I like this and that and the food. And you go, excuse me, shut up. I am the one telling you about my trip to India. So that's adding parallels. We try to relate to what the person is saying, but it's wrong, because what you're doing is you're interrupting and you're lessening the value of what that person is expressing. So yes, would you shut up, listen, and then say something? And ideally that something starts by very briefly summarizing what that person said, or referring to that person's feelings, which were in whatever she said. Listening is... We're not great listeners, as I said, and we should be, because it's a key component in conversations, of course.
It's really interesting, because what you talked a bit about connecting with people, and often when I think about public speaking, communication in general, part of that is what the speaker's thinking about, and then the other part is about, you know, what the other person is going through. How much do you think about what the other person, the audience, is going through, and what are the things you think about when you're advising people to communicate? Are you thinking about what are people going to be interested in? What does that look like for you?
There's two different things. If it's a one-on-one, what you should be thinking of is that person's point of view before you introduce your view of the situation. So, especially in difficult conversations, there's always two parts to a difficult conversation, which is how you say things, how the other person sees things. So you should start by referring to what that person said, so what's her view of the problem, if it's a problem, and then you relate your own view of the situation. The other thing we do, which is not correct, is if there's someone to blame, of course it's never you, it's the other person to blame. So what's going to happen is she's going to become defensive, and then you'll solve nothing. So instead of blaming, what you should think of is, what did I contribute to this? What do I think the other person contributed to this situation? So again, it's listening, and it's thinking in a broader way. So it's not only what I think, it's what the other person thinks.
Often it can take a lot of deliberate effort to take yourself out of a situation and think about what the person wants in a situation, or the context into account. So for example, sometimes you go to an event and you'll hear this huge speech, and you'll just think, gosh, this person sounds very deluded. The fact that it's such a long speech, they've completely lost the audience, they haven't taken into account there's been loads of other speeches. What do you advise people in terms of taking into account the situation that they're going into, and the energy, or influencing people based on the moment they're involved in?
There's two things. It used to be just one, now it's two. Number one is how much they know about the topic. We tend to assume that they know more than they do, and then we lose them with fancy terms and acronyms and technicisms. So adapt to the level of knowledge. And then number two is culture. It used to be, don't discuss anything related to politics nor religion, and maybe football also. Now it's those two, plus gender, sexual preference, race, whether you're fat or not, whether you're old or not, etc. It's the wokeness aspect of speaking, and it has become a huge problem because people get annoyed very easily. So handle with care, and my advice is, if in doubt, don't say it. Don't say it. We may discuss whether this is good or bad for humanity, but don't say it, because you're going to run into problems with that audience. You're going to antagonize half the audience, and it's never good. It's not good. So those are the two main things. There's others, like how many people are there in the room, what's the day of the week, time of the day, is the boss there, because he's going to always ask the question for which you have no answer, to show that he knows more than you do, or the boss of your boss normally, not your boss maybe. What did they do before? What are they going to do after your talk? What do they think about you? Do you need to establish your credentials at the start? Is someone introducing you, which is ideal, by the way? If someone can introduce you instead of yourself, so much better, especially if that person is in a position of authority, because part of that authority distills onto you through that introduction. So yes, you should always analyze the audience before you start. And if you don't know much about them, then ask them. So sometimes what I do, I send an email to persons attending that conference, a few of them, and I ask them what their objectives are, what they want to find out, how much they know about the topic. And then not only do I use that to prepare my speech, I also mention it along my speech. So I've talked to a few of you and you said this and that, and they go, oh, great, he's prepared for this. So he cares about us. One of the three aspects of ethos, pathos, logos, Aristotle, the artistic means of persuasion, as he called those three. One of the components of ethos, which is how they perceive you, is caring about the audience. So you should show that you care for them. It's like, you're special to me. And this is a very easy way of doing precisely that.
Persuasion, the art of persuasion, sometimes it can be difficult to pinpoint why certain people are so persuasive. I'm sure you can think of those that you're completely enamored by in terms of their ability to persuade people. Are there things that people don't often think about in terms of one's ability to persuade people?
Some people are completely predisposed to stand up in front of an audience and just not only dominate them, they entertain them. They're charismatic, which is a very funny, very ample word, but charisma is like magnetism. So you're attracted to that individual. You don't know why, but you would follow that person to the end of the world. So some people have it easier. I mean, for instance, they're bigger, they have a deeper voice, they're bulkier, their manners are they seem very self-assured, sure-footed. In school, they were the representative of the class for whatever. So they've had it easier in life. Some others are not as expansive. They think things through before opening their mouth. More, they're introverts. I'm an introvert. I like being an introvert. I like being on my own. Whenever I go to a party with my wife, we take two cars because at midnight I'm bored, so I go back home and she stays till 3, 4 a.m. But it's good to be an introvert. I enjoy being an introvert. But some introverts hate in standing in front of an audience because they don't like to be exposed. So what do you do to fix that? You need training, and this is so easy. Public speaking is just doing it again and again. The more you do it, the better you become at this. So it's two things. First, you need to find opportunities to speak, and then you need to rehearse whatever you're going to say. The more you rehearse, the more natural you will sound, which seems like a contradiction, but that's the way it works. This is like actors. How do you think an actress seems so natural on a stage at the theater? Because if you're shooting a movie, you can redo the scene again and again. But at the theater, it seems like it's happening there and then. Why? Because they've rehearsed a million times. So it goes against common sense, maybe. Excuse me, you mean the more you do it, the more natural you sound? It's the opposite. It's the faker you will come across. No, the more you rehearse, the more natural you'll seem.
And culture is quite an appropriate component of this. British people often don't communicate what they want, and the Brits, we dance around the truth for politeness. And I think that this is an example of the nuance of communication. When you look at people on how they communicate and what they talk about, do you have any beliefs about what people don't do in communication that they should do?
Maybe the Brits should be more straight. I shared a flat for 3 years with a guy from London, my friend Farouk, and we had a great relationship. We still have. Communication was very direct. But I asked him for his advice in communicating with my boss, because my boss was from the UK also. And I was always too direct. Farouk said to me, excuse me, you cannot say that to your boss. You need to go around and around, and then after a little while, that's when you pinpoint things. So there's a big difference in communicating. It varies so much across cultures. The farther north you go in Europe, the farther east you go worldwide, the less expansive people tend to be with their nonverbal expression. and then the more nuanced their communication also. So in that sense, for instance, the Japanese are very much like the Brits, as you say. So that this is not direct to the point, like they may do it in the US or like we do to an extent in Spain. So recognizing your own communication style goes a long way towards adapting to other communication styles. Whenever I go to Saudi Arabia, which is a place I'm visiting very often now because the place is booming, it's a very high context culture in the sense that you cannot be direct. You have to go all around to get to the point. When you meet someone from Saudi to do business with, the first meeting, you don't dare discuss business. So you talk about the weather and about politics and about how things are going in general in the world, and then you can discuss, maybe in your next meeting or third meeting, then you can get down to business. So know what your culture, how your culture you grew up in, influences your style of communicating. There's not a lot you can do about that, because if you try to change things in yourself, then we have a problem. Like I was saying at the start, you are yourself in communicating. You cannot change your personality, but you need to adapt to the audience as much as you can.
The benefits of good communication couldn't be more clear, whether it be in business, romance, politics. Do you take a view that things are missing in how people generally are taught to communicate? Perhaps it's how honest people are. So an interesting comment an entrepreneur made on a previous episode was how early on in his journey, he didn't realize how much it would pay to be vulnerable with people. And actually being vulnerable with people has paid off in huge dividends, in the sense that people can connect much better when people are being real with each other. Do you have any comment on that?
You always need to adapt to the audience, remember, and even if the audience is just another person you are having conversation with. I can think of a few examples where if I am showing my vulnerability, I'm going to lose big in whatever exchange we're having. So sometimes you can't. It's all very fine and dandy and dandelions and save the planet. But sometimes you cannot do that. You need to still be yourself. You're not faking anything, but you're not opening up to the other person as much, because if you do, she's going to crush you. So depending on the level of authority, depending on the business you're in, depending on your relationship with that person, then you need to watch out. Just an example, I was training a CEO just a couple of weeks ago, and he was very stiff and very down to, excuse me, give me the steak, you can keep the broccoli, I don't care. So if I am opening up and being nice and emotional, he's going to despise me, very likely. Now, that person was not a bully, but it's a different case. But she's in charge of millions and millions of euros in business, so of course, too. Yes, but again, adapt to the audience. Always adapt to the audience. Always yourself, but adapt to the audience.
That's interesting. There are times I can think of in business, or maybe it's a social setting, when one needs to change the power balance of what's happening and take a step back, and perhaps you've trained business leaders just on that topic, where they're being confronted over issues and they really need to change what's happening and persuade people who are very much on the offense against them and completely change that power balance. How do you guide people in those difficult confrontational scenarios?
I have so much fun training people in how to confront these situations, because I role play. So I'm like a really nasty person when I train on how to answer questions, horrible questions. So what you do is, first, if you ask me a nasty question, for instance, you say, Javier, I completely disagree with you. You're so wrong. My experience with this was completely opposite to what you just said. So I don't know who invited you to speak here, but I think I just wasted a lot of my time. So what I do after that, first thing I do is this. So I shut up for 5 seconds while I hold that person's eye contact. And I don't smile, I don't retreat, I just hold my ground. Then the first thing coming out of your lips, if someone disagrees radically with you, is, I like you. So for instance, you say, I completely understand what you're saying. Or, knowing your background, it's very common to hold that view. Or, yes, I've heard that before, I understand what you're saying. Or you can even say, of course you have all the right in the world to disagree with me. So first you say, I like you. Because the first thing you want to say is, you're not going to make me look stupid in front of everyone. So I'm going to get you now. So instead of that, shut up, eye contact, 5 seconds, and then I like you. And then the next thing you do is you offer facts. Not opinions, facts, which you may have already given that person or that audience. You give them those facts again. Now, after that, she may shut up, or she keeps trying to hit you, which is what normally happens. So if she keeps going, then you have several ways out. First, you can use the audience. For instance, you say, I don't know, what do the rest of you think? If you're nice to that person, and the first thing you said is, I understand you, normally they side up with you. If they don't, then you have another problem. The other thing you may do is you use the time card. So you say, look, after like the third exchange, you say, look, I'm enjoying this conversation very much, but I would like to give you a chance to participate also, because unfortunately we don't have a lot of time. So if you don't mind, why don't you and I take up this after our meeting? Because I really want to go into depth about this with you. And then the other thing you can do is you can, instead of saying yes, no, black, white, I disagree with you, you go above and you say, look, I think the reason you are having this view is way more relevant than any answer I could give you today. So could you please elaborate on how you came to think this way? So what I'm doing is I'm deviating the conversation from yes, no, black, white, I hate you, you're horrible, and you hate me too, something which is not only more productive towards solving whatever that person is coming up with, but also it's more interesting for the other members of the audience. So it's a process. Now, it's interesting to have that process screwed in your brain, because when the moment comes, when you're under fire, the last thing you can do is think. So you should stop, think, act. I also always say this because I'm a scuba diver. So the number one rule in scuba diving is stop, think, act. Because if you act first, you may die. It's like you're at 25 meters of depth, you run out of air, you shoot to the surface, you're dead. Embolia. Instead of that, you look for your body, and then you think, and then you take his regulator, and then that's it. Problem solved. Stop, think, act. The number one thing when the situation is all right is shut up. Shut up. Give yourself time to think.
The power of silence, we see it when we're in those situations. It's very clear the impact it can have. So super interesting you talk about that. And fear, a lot of people get very nervous before a speech. What do you tell them?
Number one, rehearse. Rehearse non-stop, as many times as you can. My mom, she worked for an NGO which was trying to have the UN come up with the Declaration of the Universal Rights of the Family. I didn't go anywhere, but she kept going to New York and to Vienna, and she was a very shy woman, very much an introvert. And she stood up and she spoke to all those people in that huge place. And I always think of my mom when talking about stress control, because she did it through rehearsing. She rehearsed her speeches like 100 times at home. She stood up and she did it again and again. Number one consequence of that, you sound more natural, as I said. Number two, you're able to control your fear. Now, you need to be stressed. If you're not stressed when you face an audience, it's going to be bad, because you won't have enough power to show enthusiasm and authority. So you need to be stressed. It's completely normal, because you're facing a situation which is, by the way, not real, because you think they're after you. The audience they want to eat you up. They don't. They just want you to have a great time. Otherwise, they suffer. When you shake, when you sweat in front of them, they suffer with you. It's called empathy. So it's a very natural reaction to a perceived psychological danger, which is, it's two-pronged. It's the possibility of losing self-esteem, number one, and everything you do in your mind is geared towards loving yourself. Number two, it's the possibility of rejection. Because we're social animals, if you're rejected now, it's okay. You move from London to Manchester, or maybe they like you there, and if they don't in London. But 50,000 years ago, when living in caves, if they kicked you out of the cave, you're dead in no time. So the fear of rejection, we have it screwed deep down in our brains. So what do you do? Number one, as I said, rehearse. Number two, know what's going on inside. So when you recognize your fear, that's when you're able to manage it. And that fear, as I said, is baseless, but to you it's so very real. So know what's going on, and know that you're shaking and you're sweating because you're a perfect survival machine and you're getting ready to face danger. And then the other most important thing is you need to breathe very slowly and very deeply right before you start. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you calm yourself down, because you're telling your sympathetic nervous system, which is the one that kicks us into action, that everything is fine. Otherwise, you would be panting. So breathe slowly. I do this. I breathe in, counting to 4 seconds. Then I hold it for a couple of seconds. I exhale, counting to 4 again. Hold it for a couple of seconds. Inhale, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2. In the military, they call it the box, which is 4, 4, 4, 4 seconds. I find it too stressful, if you're stressed, to not breathe for 4. So I got it down to 2, and it works. 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2. And then after 5 minutes of doing that, you'll end up yawning because you'll be so relaxed. Then, not relaxed to fall asleep, but relaxed with enough energy to perform, which is what they need you to do.
So human psychology, how people behave, have you spent a lot of time researching to understand the nuances of human behavior and body language?
Yes, it's not my main focus of research, but I've trained in excess of 10,000 individuals. So, like you, so I make you speak in front of an audience, and then I tape you, and then we watch the recording. I probably, if I had kept them all, it's 30,000 recordings of people speaking. Now, from observing people on stage, the patterns are so clear that I guess I'm not a psychologist, but I could write a book on what people do with the gestures. For instance, someone is clutching hands, they have a problem. If they do it all the time, they are looking down. Of course, it's a very clear sign of, I don't want to be here. They're moving their feet all over the place. They're stressed. They have excess energy. They don't know what to do with it. They waste it in a way which is not conducive towards showing power and showing enthusiasm. So this is what we said at the start. When you know how you express yourself, you can build on what's good and then fine-tune the components of your nonverbal expression that will make you come across as more powerful and more enthusiastic. There's tons of research. So again, I'm not an expert on this, but so much psychological research on how we express ourselves, which comes from the late 19th century and then 20th century, and of course now. Because before that, the analysis of nonverbal expression was very broad, very abstract. And if you read the classics, Aristotle, Cicero, Quintilian, all these guys, they're not very clear on what should we do with our system when we express ourselves. It's very broad strokes. Cicero said it's like playing a harp. So you strike one chord or another, depending on what you want to say. Okay, thank you very much. What do I do with my harp? So yes, there's tons of research. Thousands of papers on this. There's also a lot of pop psychology, by the way, on nonverbal expressions. There's many books. How to come across as a confident speaker, okay, handled with care. Some of them are very well researched. Some others are just self-help manuals.
Yeah, and you recommend reading?
One is Alan and Barbara Pease, Pease, they're married, and they've published quite a few books on nonverbal expression. Again, it's probably self-help, but there's tons of solid backing for what they say. And then the other one is a guy who used to work for the FBI, who's called Joe Navarro. Navarro, I think it's his Spanish origin. Navarro, Navarro. And he wrote a book called What Everybody is Saying. Everybody is separated, 2 words. He's an expert in detecting liars. So based on what he did, his years at the FBI, he wrote this book. It's a very interesting book also.
You talked a bit about how different people have their natural styles. Is there a part of your communication that you want to focus on and tweak?
I am always trying to concentrate on my eye contact. So the hardest thing to manage of your nonverbal components of expression in front of an audience is eye contact. Because the rest of the things that compose your expression is hands, arms, feet, movement on stage, weight on one hip or the other, the way you use your face expression, the modulation of your voice. Okay, those become, when you train them, they become second sync very fast. You don't have to think about them anymore, they just work. Eye contact, you always have to think. Always, because we tend to scan a room. Now, eye contact is the number one skill to transmit authority. So what you do is you look at everyone in that room for 3 to 5 seconds. It's like having mini conversations. Problem, we scan. So some people don't even scan. They look up or they look down or they look at just one person because they're not very comfortable in that situation. But we scan because we are trying to avoid their evaluation, unconsciously maybe. And then we scan because I'm getting information overdose. So when I look at a person in a room for a bit, my brain is distracted because it's saying, stop looking at that person. You have to think about what to say next. It's too much information coming in. So instead of that, I scan. So you always have to think. And if you ask me, that one thing would be eye contact. It's just 1, 2, 3. Okay, next person. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because we also tend to focus on the nice faces, the ones who look like they're appreciating what you're saying, and then you forget about the rest.
And let's say you are invited to talk at the World Economic Forum. It's the biggest talk you've ever talked at. You are feeling a bit nervous. Just before you go in, is that like a sentence that you would tell yourself before and try and focus your mind?
Okay, instead of a sentence, let me give you something else you can do. Talk to the IT guy. Become friends with that guy because he's going to be your support. And if you know that you're one with that person, you feel safer. Maybe the camera guy, I always make a point of going an hour early and talk to the person organizing that huge thing and direct me towards the sound, the guy in the control room. So I stay quite a good while with that person and then I feel safer because I know he has my back. Now, one sentence I may say is just keep going. I do this in mountain biking. I do a lot of mountain biking. And with scary descents, very rocky, full of roots, very slippery, where you fall and you break a rib like I've done 3 times. What I do is just keep going. I don't think, I just keep going. And I go. And I cruise through that segment. If I think too much, then I just walk the segment. So keep going. Just, you can do it. You can do it. It's cliched maybe, but you keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah, that resonates a lot. And okay, so what about you're just about to have a huge talk and you get a message on your phone. It's really bad news. You are thrown. The nerves are in the stomach. You are feeling a bit wobbly. Do you just think, right, I'm going to shut out everything that's happening there and just completely focus?
Yes, actually it's happened to me so many times. So let me give you an example. My mountain bike was stolen in my car right in front of the university. I had it in my car because I was taking it to the repair shop after class. So I go to class, come down 3 hours later, my bike's gone. So they broke into my car, they stole my bike. If I tell you the price of my bike, you'll stop speaking to me because it's ridiculous. So what did I do? I had to, of course, call the police, call the insurance company, who said, no, we're not giving you any money back on your bike, etc. And then after that, I had class again. So I had 30 minutes to talk to the police, and then I had class for 3 hours in the afternoon. And I just cruised. So I get my mind off the thing and just kept doing what I needed to do. And then after that, I went home and then I realized how horrible everything was. And when you're well rehearsed, you can safely disconnect from whatever is wrong. Now, if it's horribly wrong, of course, then, for instance, my dad passed away many years ago, but he was 91 already, so he died of old age. And I was actually teaching. So I was in front of a group, and then my brother, I get a call on my phone because he was not feeling very well, so my phone was in vibration mode. My brother, so I take the call, and then I say to my class, I'm sorry, I have to go, my dad just died. They're very, very shocked, of course. But in most situations, just if you know what you have to do, you can always focus. Think about the audience, think what they need from you, and think about them and not about yourself. I know this is easy to say, of course, it depends on the situation.
Yeah,
but you need to be
really
well rehearsed. When you're rehearsed, you can just keep going.
2 speeches that you've seen that people can watch online that you recommend people watch to learn from?
Number 1 is a lady called Jill Taylor. She's a neurosurgeon, and she had a stroke herself. So it's like analyzing in herself what she was analyzing in her patients. And she tells, it's a TED Talk, she tells the audience about that experience. It's an amazing speech. It's very well structured. Her style is fantastic. And the other one, I would say, this is an older one, but Churchill's speech, we shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the... which is a very funny style, of course. It wouldn't work today, which says what we're talking about before, the cultural thing. So Churchill today would seem like fake, probably. Same as Maduro in Venezuela, or Hugo Chavez before him. Hugo Chavez, the way he spoke, which is very enthusiastic, very amusing. If we did that in Spain, as imagine he was a Spaniard, it would be so weird because it's completely different style culturally. So those 2.
Javier, thank you so much for today, for sharing so much wisdom, and what an interesting chat. Really grateful for your time. If professionals want to learn from you more, can they find you online?
Yeah, of course. Well, first, thank you so much, Arthur. It was a joy to be with you again after so many years since we met at RIE. And yes, the only thing, if you want to link up with me, my name is Javier Bernad, Bernad, which is like Bernard without the final R. I spent half my life correcting my last name, but it's very easy to find me on LinkedIn, Javier Bernad.
Okay.